even looking every day, I see headlines like this one. Mutant polio virus spreads in Nigeria. And I see it happen in Latin America, in the Middle East, always the same UN program. Polio, the dreaded paralyzing disease, stamped out industrialized world, is spreading in Nigeria, as health officials say. In some cases, it's caused by the vaccine used to fight it. That's CBS News. Weaponized. Here's another one. FDA, Glax Merck vaccines okay despite pig virus, Reuters. And it says the viruses made by GlaxoSmithKline and Merck are safe to use despite being contaminated with pig virus, U.S. health regulators said Friday. And then it goes on to admit that it can actually be linked to cancer and other health problems. Folks, this is every day. We read about, I had Wolfgang Wodarg on a few months ago, the head of the EU Commission, a medical doctor. They got all the documents, how the big 5 drug companies paid off the U.S., British, and EU government heads, their doctors, to come out and say, you're all dead, it's the most deadly thing in history, hundreds of millions are going to die, take the H1N1 shot. And then his commission found it is a dangerous shot. So what's happening is they're getting decimated. They're losing their propaganda war. And so what they'll do is they'll pick out a sacrificial goat, someone to basically punish publicly, to create a hoax so that people won't look at the masses of evidence. And here it is, UK bans doctor who linked autism to vaccine. For 3 years, they have savagely lied about him, misrepresented what he's done, and now they've taken his medical license in England. He's a British surgeon who lives in Austin, by the way, researcher best known for his work regarding MMR vaccine and its connection with autism and inflammatory bowel disease. And just a few days ago, he lost his medical license in the UK, but he's already moved here. His new book is Callous Disregard, Autism and Vaccines, The Truth Behind the Tragedy. And you can get the book in bookstores everywhere. It's forwarded by Jenny McCarthy. So we go to Dr. Andrew Wakefield now to get the truth from him. Sir, thank you for coming on with us.
Alex, thank you very much. Great pleasure. And thank you very much for your supportive words.
You bet. Now, just give us the backstory, your awakening, the studies you did, which are backed up by a bunch of other studies, I would add now, and then how they've tried to crucify you as a case point example.
I will, and I'll try and be brief, Alex. I am a mainstream academic gastroenterologist working in London. May 1995, parents started calling me and saying my kid was normal. They had this vaccine, MMR, and they lost their skills, they lost eye contact, they didn't want to play, they couldn't speak anymore, and they became autistic. And I said, I'm sorry, you must have got the wrong number because I'm a gastroenterologist. They said, my kid has got terrible bowel problems, diarrhea 12 times a day, they're in terrible pain, they're banging their head against the wall, I know they're in pain, they're bloated. And the doctor says, your kid's autistic, they're bound to have these problems. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we investigated these children, and they had a bowel disease. So we did our duty, our clinical duty, to put the children before anything else and investigate them. And we found they had a treatable bowel disease, which the medical profession had ignored previously. Now, the problem came is when the parents said, and my child regressed after a vaccine. If the child had regressed after natural chicken pox, people would have found that fascinating, and you and I wouldn't be having this conversation now. But because it was a vaccine, it could not happen. Now, the parents are right about the bowel problem in their kids. The doctors were wrong, and therefore we had a moral and professional obligation to look at whether the vaccine was causing the problem. That's when the trouble started. And so I said, right, I'm going to go back and I'm going to read every safety study that's ever been done on measles vaccines, MMR vaccines. I wrote a 250-page report. I offered it to my colleagues. I said, I can no longer support the use of this vaccine because the safety studies are not there. They're just not there.
Doctor, let me stop you right now. I'm going to need you to start over. You've backed away from your phone, so we're having trouble hearing you.
Okay.
Yeah, get closer to your phone. Go ahead.
Okay. So I took the vaccine safety issue very, very seriously, and in many ways I wish I'd taken it more seriously before I vaccinated my own children. Alex, am I coming across now?
Yes, you are, sir.
Okay, good. And I made the recommendation that children should continue to be vaccinated but might get the single vaccine, because I felt that the safety studies of the single vaccine measles, mumps, and rubella were better than those for MMR. Anyway, this caused a meltdown because they didn't want that to happen. The government didn't want that to happen. And so I made that recommendation in February of 1998. And when demand for the single vaccine was at its highest, 6 months later, the government withdrew the license for that vaccine in the UK. And so parents could no longer get the choice. Now, why would you do that? Why would you take away a choice from parents for how they would protect their children by removing the single vaccine? And so measles came back. They blame me. And in fact, the reason it came back is because they took away the choice. It wasn't an anti-vaccine argument, but it was saying give parents the choice of how they protect their children. The government took that choice away.
Dr. Wakefield, going back to the beginning, I've also seen research papers separate from yours that Crohn's that didn't exist until the 50s and 60s has been linked to antibodies associated with measles vaccines and others. And again, I'm not a doctor, but for any layperson, if a child supposedly has a neurological disorder, why would that cause them to have horrible diarrhea, which anyone with an autistic child knows is associated with it? I mean, they know exactly what's going on here. So let's break that down.
Well, okay, the first question is why would there be a link between a gastrointestinal problem and a brain disorder? Well, this has been known for a long, long time, and we are what we eat, in effect. You'll know, Alex. I mean, I know because I like beer. If I drink a beer, then 5 minutes later I'm going to feel the effect in my brain. So toxins, neurotoxins from the intestine will get through and affect the brain. And the drugs that we give to treat psychological and psychiatric conditions are absorbed through the intestine. We also know that there are diseases like liver failure, where the more you become jaundiced, then your brain stops to work, and then you ultimately go into coma and die. And that is because bacterial products from the gut are getting through and injuring the brain because the damaged liver isn't filtering them out. So this concept that there is a link between the bowel and the brain is as old as the hills. Is it relevant to what's happening in children with autism? I think so. But the most important thing is it generates testable ideas, testable scientific ideas that can be looked at. And what we find is when we treat the children's intestine, then in many cases the brain improves. And that's very exciting because before this we were dealing with a disease that is untreatable. Your kids got autism, put them in a home, forget about them. Now we can start to do something about it.
And the system is mad because you're a prestigious doctor, you're well-spoken, your research has now been backed up by other studies, and so they have now crucified you, or they're attempting to destroy you, but I think this is going to backfire on them.
Well, to be honest, it could become their worst nightmare, because I have been constrained from saying anything so far because of the legal process. Now that's over and I can speak, and during the course of the hearing in the UK that you were talking about, the regulatory hearing, I obtained a lot of documents which are going to be very, very embarrassing for the government, because what they exposed is why they went to these lengths to discredit me in the first place. And what is interesting is that when I got involved in litigation on behalf of the children as a medical expert, I thought that we were litigating against the pharmaceutical company. In fact, we weren't. In the UK, we were litigating against the government. Why? Because when we introduced the MMR vaccine in the UK, it was a dangerous vaccine that was introduced. It had already been withdrawn in Canada for safety reasons, but it was introduced in the UK knowing that there was a problem, but because it was made by the home team. It was made by a UK company. And so they appear to have given a preferential market share to the UK company despite the fact that they knew the vaccine had problems. And the UK company, reluctant to get involved in that, seems to have got an indemnity from the government, so the government assumed their liability for vaccine damage. And they didn't want that news to come out.
Doc, we've got you for the rest of the hour, and I want to go through their disinformation, because when I watch the news, they say, he paid people to be in his study. Oh, my gosh. Well, every study I've ever seen, they pay people. And they imply you're this liar, and you've been caught in this fraud. But we know, as vaccination has gone up, Autism has gone up. We've seen all these other studies now connecting not just autism but Crohn's to vaccines. I want to discuss that. And from your research, your studies, what the mechanism is, what's happening to the intestines via this vaccine that is then attacking the brain, and the treatments you've found for parents out there that have children so they can hopefully reverse some of the things that have happened. Because of you and Jenny McCarthy and many others, the system, again, is really scared. They've got Dr. Dina Dell and others, who says, by the way, vitamins are bad for you. He says, I mean, it's incredible, out there basically lying about you guys, building straw men. They are really desperate. But the good news is all the studies, all the research shows the people are really waking up to how dangerous these vaccines are.